It is the nature of God to do what? Keep covenant. But it's the nature of man to do what? Break covenant. So the burden is on us not to break covenant, because he won't break covenant. Hallelujah. What he has promised, he will be faithful to perform. So then after making the cut and the scar, they had the covenant meal. And then they did something very interesting. They exchanged names. In other words, the person from one tribe took part of the name of the other tribe, and the person from the other tribe took part of the name of the other tribe, and they no longer had the old name, but they had a new name. And it came from the name of their covenant partner. Remember when Abram was in covenant with God? God said, you'll no longer be called Abram, but you will be called Abraham. And God's name is Yahweh. We took the Yah, the Ah, from Abram and put it in with Abraham. Hallelujah. God in covenant with Abram. And we're in covenant with God tonight. Hallelujah. Praise the name of the Lord. Then they had a memorial established. You know, when they crossed the Jordan River and different things, they would set up stones. And these stones would be a memorial to help them remember the covenant. I want to read something to you tonight. This came from Kay Arthur's book, Our Covenant God. And this, in fact, most of this information that I have tonight came from Regent University. I did research to get all of this so that I could have it organized for us here tonight. But I want to read this description of cutting covenant to you. The animals had been slain cut in half down the spine. Their bright blood stained the stones, the dirt, the grass, vying with sprinklets of wildflowers in their display of color. A covenant was being cut. Two men stood opposite each other. Each removed his own robes and handed them to the other, then clothed himself in his covenant brother's garment. I am putting on you, and you me. We are one. Picking up their weapons from the ground, each handed the other his sword and his bow. By this action they understood, your enemies are now my enemies, and mine yours. They handed each other their belts, meaning when you are weak, my strength will be there for you. In a figure-8 path, both walked through the pieces of flesh lying opposite each other. It was a walk of death. I am dying to my independent living and to my rights. They swore by an oath as they pointed first to heaven, God, do so to me, and then to the slain animals, if I break this covenant. Then each one made a cut on his wrist, and with a hand clasp, the two men mingled their blood. It is agreed. We once two have now become one. In turn, each recited what he owned and what he owed. From this day forward, they would share all their resources. What is mine is yours. What is yours is mine. Each reached down and scooped up dirt mingled with small stones and rubbed this abrasive into the cut in his wrist. Wherever I am, when I lift my hand and see the scar, I will remember I have a covenant partner. They exchanged new names. Because of the covenant, I have a new identity. They sat down to partake of a covenant meal. One broke bread and placed it in his covenant partner's mouth. Then the other did the same. You are eating me, and I you. Finally, a memorial was set up, a pile of stones, a planted tree, a written contract as a testimony of the covenant they had made. Now I call you friend, my friend, who sticks closer than a brother. That is a description of a covenant ritual. Two people coming into covenant, a blood covenant. So before we get to the end tonight, I'd just like to talk a minute about how God views covenants. Because in our modern day society, in our modern day country, we don't think about covenants much. We basically live very self-centered, self-reliant, independent lives. We may care about our immediate family, and take care of them. But for the most part, we're basically almost R4 and no more. That's who is first in our lives. But God is very serious about covenants. And it would behoove us to learn from God's attitude towards covenants so that we will have the same attitude ourselves. I want to tell you a story. This is a true story from the Old Testament. God had forbidden Israel to cut covenants with the foreign nations surrounding the land of Canaan. Without seeking God's guidance, Joshua entered into a covenant with the Gibeonites after they deceived him into believing they lived far away. When surrounding nations attacked the Gibeonites, Israel was bound by covenant to protect them, and God backed them up. Now you see, sometimes whenever you read the Bible, I don't know about you, but I'm not super spiritual. Sometimes I don't understand some things I read. And I don't mean just don't understand. I mean, I don't understand. If it was me, I would have said, well, we don't need to help them Gibeonites. After all, they came and lied to us to begin with. They told us they came from a faraway country, and they put on fake clothes, and they got old, stale, crusty bread, and they made their wine pouches look like they were worn out. Well, I'm not going to help them. They lied to me. But you see, they'd entered into a covenant in the sight of God. And because they entered into a covenant, God held the Israelites to the deal. And when the other nations surrounded the Gibeonites attacked them, Israel was bound by covenant to protect them and to go out and fight battle for them because they were in covenant relationship. Listen, friends, we are called to be in a covenant relationship with God, and God is in a covenant relationship with us. And you see, it's a two-way street. You know, we're all excited whenever God comes and fights our battles. You know, whenever God comes and delivers us, whenever God comes to work miracles for us, whenever God comes and shows himself great in our midst, we're real excited about that. But friends, we have to be just as faithful to our side of the covenant as God is to his. Amen. We need to realize that there are some terms to the covenant we have with God, and God expects things of us. He expects something of us. And since we're in covenant relationship with him, we need to be prepared to lay down our lives for him if the need be. Oh, hallelujah. What Jesus say? No greater love than this hath any man than to lay down his life for his friends. And by friends, he didn't just mean mere acquaintances, because he was saying this right before he went to the cross, right before he shed his blood, right before he cut a covenant with those people. They weren't just his friends like, I got friends on Facebook. I don't know any of those people. No, they were friends because they stood with him in his trials. He says, I no longer call you a servant, but a friend, because a servant doesn't know his master's business. But you're my friends because you have stood with me in my trials. And you know, a lot of times we get the whole wrong idea about the things going on in our lives. We have negative things happen to us. We're disappointed by situations. We lose something. Something doesn't go our way. And we boo-hoo and cry, get all upset about it. And we don't realize that sometimes the reason that happens is because the sufferings of Christ are overflowing into our lives. And what we're suffering isn't because of us. It's because we're identified with him in covenant relationship with him. And we have to stand, and having done all to stand therefore with the full armor of God. And not turn or run away and not fail to be faithful.